You remind me that money won is twice as sweet as money earned.
Welcome to Money Unplugged. I'm Chris Hill. Thanks for being here. Money won is twice as sweet as money earned. That's the immortal Paul Newman from one of my favorite movies, The Color of Money. It's almost Independence Day here in the States, and just like last year, I'm going to share 3 quick thoughts and then let you get back to your long weekend. Don't worry, the show will be back next week with a new guest. I'm so grateful to the people who come on this show and share their experiences and perspectives. I know some of you have been listening since the show started in early 2025. I know some of you just started listening in the last few weeks. And whenever you started listening, I'm grateful you're choosing to spend part of your waking hours listening to these conversations. We all have different amounts of money, but we all have the same number of hours in a day. And you're choosing to spend half an hour of your week with me and whoever my guest is. I do not take that for granted, so thank you. We've got some really fun conversations coming up later this summer. And just like last year, we're going to be doing ad-free August on the show. I love my sponsors. Every time you hear an ad on this show, it's a company doing things that I love, making products that I love. But, you know, it's nice to take a break now and then, and that includes advertising breaks. I did ad-free August last year. I'm doing it again this year. Please don't tell my friends in the podcast industry. I don't want them thinking I'm trying to start a revolution of some sort. I'm just doing this one thing on my little show. Speaking of my friends in the podcast industry, all right, this is the first thing I wanted to mention real quick. There's a question I have gotten over the past 2 years from people in the podcast industry that I just can't answer. And I'm hoping you can help provide the answer. The question I get from people in the podcast industry is some version of the following. What are listeners getting from your show? Why do people listen to Money Unplugged? And every time I've been asked that, I say, I'm not really sure. Like, my hunch is at least part of it has to do with reassurance, because guests come on this show and they're sharing personal stories. And in some cases, these are painful experiences. And I know most of us have had some type of financial pain or stress in our lives. And so maybe listening to accomplished people talk about their own struggles and how they overcame them or are still dealing with them, maybe that helps reassure you to think, I'm not alone. It's not just me who has gone through this. So my hunch is that reassurance might be part of why you listen, but I don't know. So my first thing today is to ask you for a favor. Could you please email info@moneyunpluggedpod.com and tell me what you get out of this show or why you keep listening? Or if someone asks you what podcast you're listening to and you tell them Money Unplugged and they say, what is that? What do you tell them? And by the way, if you have any questions of your own, let me know that too. If you have any suggestions for maybe other speed round questions you think might be interesting or fun, fire away. The email address is info@moneyunpluggedpod.com. There's a link in the episode description. You can just click that when you're done listening. Second thing is there are more than 70 episodes of this podcast. And just like you, every guest has an origin story. Every guest has a financial origin story, just like you. And I was thinking about the idea of origin stories the other day, and I realized every one of them, whether it's a guest on this show or a Marvel movie like Iron Man or Captain America, one aspect involved in every origin story is fragility. Everyone who comes on this show, at some point, their financial life is fragile, which means their personal life is fragile. And that can be scary. But that also means learning from mistakes and working and overcoming that fragile state to become stronger and more durable provides a sense of relief and satisfaction and a demonstration that not only can people work to overcome their challenges, but also at the same time remain vigilant so that they hopefully never end up in that financially fragile place again. Even America. I mean, America's origin story has a fragile aspect to it. Just thinking about that since it's early July. One of my favorite books is by a historian named Joseph Ellis. He won the Pulitzer Prize in 2001 for a book he wrote called Founding Brothers. And it's about the first decade of the United States of America. Because the broad strokes of history that we were taught growing up were like, well, we had the Boston Tea Party and we wrote the Declaration of Independence and then we won the Revolutionary War and that was that. But in Founding Brothers, which is really a series of 6 short stories within a single book, Ellis writes about how incredibly fragile America was in that first decade. Because democracy was this relatively untested concept. And in large part because of the relationship between people like George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Ben Franklin, John Adams, Alexander Hamilton, James Madison, Aaron Burr. This group of highly accomplished and also flawed men helped guide America through a very tenuous first decade. Suffice to say, I am a fan of origin stories. Okay, the third and final thing I wanted to touch on, and it's another category of topic that comes up on the show from time to time, is outsourcing. And by that I mean, I'm talking about someone who is sharing a story about how they outsource some part of their financial life. An obvious example is taxes. I don't know about you. I know a few people who love to do their own taxes. But a lot of people, and I am one of them, are happy to pay someone else to do the taxes. Investing is another one. There are plenty of smart people who just have little to no interest in following the market and picking individual stocks. So they contribute to their 401k or whatever retirement plan they have, or just put money away on a regular basis into an S&P 500 index fund or the Vanguard Total Market Index Fund. I think about one of the first episodes on this show when I went to Chicago and I sat down with Christine Benz at Morningstar. And she talked about how much she loved seeing younger people getting into index investing, to the point that she would see them wearing T-shirts and sweatshirts that say VTSAX and chill. Which, by the way, I don't want to tell the people at Vanguard how to run their business, but if they are not selling those shirts with that ticker symbol on them, I feel like they're missing an opportunity. So it's natural and understandable, and I would argue smart, to outsource parts of your financial life that are going to cause you stress or make you lose sleep. As I always say, if you're losing sleep over your investments, that's your body sending you the message, you need to fix that. But just last week, I learned firsthand that there are ways to outsource not just large parts of your financial life, but also very small ones too. Because last week, I went with a few friends of mine across the Potomac River to the MGM casino. This is not, by the way, something I do often. That's not a judgment thing or a moral thing. It's certainly not about logistics because the casino is 4 miles from my home. I can get there pretty much anytime I want. The reason I don't go often is because I'm just not that great at gambling. I'm okay, but I'm not good enough and I don't get enough enjoyment out of it to make it a regular thing. In the past 25 years, I think I've been to a casino somewhere between 5 and 10 times. But one of my good friends sent a text around to a few of us and said, let's get together, let's do this and organize this. And it seemed like it would be a fun night. So there were 4 of us. We met at the sports book in the afternoon. We watched some of the World Cup. Then we had a very nice dinner at one of the restaurants. And around 9 o'clock, we hit the casino floor. Now, one of the guys in our group loves poker. He headed upstairs to the big poker room that they have. And I went with the other 2 guys to find a blackjack table. This was a Wednesday night. The place was pretty packed. So we were walking around a bit before one of the guys found a table and sat down. So it's me and my 2 friends. And hold on. I'm realizing now that I did not, in fact, tell them I was going to talk about this on the show. So let's say that their names are Clyde and Bruce. Let's go with that. So Bruce sits on the far right side of the blackjack table. Clyde sits next to him. I sit next to Clyde. I'm in the center of the table. There are 2 seats to my left. There's a guy who was already at the table. He was in a good mood. He seemed to be doing well. So we get out our wallets to hand cash over to the dealer in exchange for chips. And it's not like we had some sort of agreement on this, but just by happenstance, all 3 of us took out $200 to get $200 worth of chips. And as this process is happening, I spot my first problem, which is the blackjack table that Bruce picked has a minimum bet of $25. Now, personally, I was hoping we were going to sit at a table where the minimum bet was lower, like maybe $15. Even that would have been nicer. Again, I don't do this very often, but I have enough experience at a casino to know at a table like this, where the minimum bet is $25, I can lose $200 very quickly. But I didn't say anything. I wasn't going to suggest moving to another table. I just thought, well, this could be an early night. Because I'm not going to be the guy who loses money and then finds an ATM at the casino so I can try to win it back. I was that guy a long time ago. For one night, I was that guy. And it did not go well. And I vowed I'm never going to do that again. So when I go to a casino, I have my allotment of money to gamble for the night, and that's it. Win or lose. So we start playing, and we're having fun because we're winning. One of the reasons I prefer blackjack to poker at a casino is because I feel like blackjack is just communal. Like if the dealer busts, then everybody wins. Poker is sort of every person for themselves. Blackjack is a little bit more of a team sport. So we all start winning because the dealer just happened to be busting over and over. I look down at my chips, and pretty quickly, I've got $300. And I'm like, this is great. We're having fun. I'm doing great. And over the next 45 minutes or so, I was slowly reminded of the fact that no, I was not doing great. I was getting lucky because the dealer was busting. Luck comes in streaks. That's what happens. And luck started going the other way. Eventually, I looked down at my chips, and my $300 is now down to $50. And that is when I started to outsource this tiny sliver of my financial life. Because my friends, Clyde and Bruce, they are much more experienced than I am. They have spent exponentially more hours at a casino blackjack table than I have. So I started leaning on my friends for advice. Like, unless it was completely obvious to me what I should do, every, I would say, third hand or so, I would just point at my cards and lean over to my friends and be like, what am I doing here? I take another card, right? And either they would confirm my hunch or they would very quickly shake their heads and set me straight like, what? No, you don't take a card when the dealer is showing a queen. And it worked. I'm happy to say it worked. Eventually, what started as a $200 stack of chips that got up to $300 and then down to $50 was methodically back above $200. After a couple hours at the table, the 3 of us decided to call it a night. I had $350 worth of chips, and I felt both good and grateful because I knew that without my friends sharing their financial expertise, I probably would have lost it all. Which is why, by the way, I did not feel one shred of jealousy when I looked over at Clyde's stack of chips, which was bigger than mine, and Bruce's stack, which was even bigger. Again, we all started with $200. I leave with $350. Clyde left with $500, and Bruce was somewhere north of $700. But hey, they put in decades of practice, so it's all good. I hope you're enjoying a long weekend with something fun, relaxing, and or delicious. Be safe out there. Thanks for listening. I really appreciate it. Drop me an email if you can, and I'll see you next week.